With my 38 years of painting experience, the 4 elements that I think are crucial and the most important, we've got light and dark, which will look after the sunlight or the light in the scene, whether it's artificial lighting. Then we have warm and cold, so that will look after depth and also colour. But then the next one is shapes. That tends to look after composition, design, and all of those important elements. Then we have edges, which I think is kind of everything and everyone is searching for in their paintings, but many times they struggle to know how to isolate them, find them, know which ones to use. So I thought today that was the one I'd love to really focus on and pay some great attention to. So I've got a few little examples here. And I think the main way I learned was definitely drawing. We can never underestimate just the sheer power of drawing. Of course, it can't teach us about colour, but you take everything else and it's there. But it just gives us that beautiful fundamentals of how to create an image. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're taking the raw ingredients and translating them into an image that is interesting or inspiring to us. So what I've got is just a very simple little still life. And I think because still life, we can set it up, dismantle it, do it when and where and wherever we want, outside, inside. Plein air is actually a great little one. But we have that little bit more time to analyse, where portraiture and figurative is a high level of degree of difficulty. But I think we also need to be able to just have that time to set one up straight away. So this was just a small little one. Actually, I was in Vermont doing a class, and I always love to do a little demonstration. And they're normally a time-limited exercise where, and that's partly so that I'm having to put pressure on myself to analyse. And I think that's where edges really do come about. So if we look at this as a subject, so what we're really trying to isolate is the hard and soft edges. And most people tend, when we're painting an object, we'll have the outline, which will sort of come around there. And that's the outline of our main object. And it's very, very simple. And that's normally the plan, is to start off small, and then eventually we can build upon that. So let me isolate some of and the other good trick is just to squint down. So I'll close one eye. Or the other great one is to make sure we're stepping back, getting back from our painting or our subject when we're analysing it. So if we take into account that, and that's one of my little paintings in behind, that edge there, that's starting to become what I would say is a lost edge. It's where a mid-tone of the object is blending with the mid-tone in the background. And they're gold. They're what we really want to ultimately search for, because the found edges normally jump out, and that's normally the thing that grabs our attention, is the found edges. And so those ones would be up here, more up there, little one there. And the other great aspect with this is that it will actually improve and drive the viewer's eye to your normally primary focal point. So we want our sharpest edge up against our other sharpest edges in that focal area, so that is truly driving the eye to where we want. So as I mentioned, still life is such a great exercise. It actually helps to teach us really to see almost everything. The one aspect that I think it may tend to suffer from is the artistic license. That's one where we're more thinking in editing and what we're leaving out, what we're putting in. That's more in the shapes area, what shapes we're putting in, what shapes we are really trying to push to the viewer's eye and to get the attention. So for me, that's some of the main ones. And you think with this little bit of light over here, you would think that's going to be the one where we want the viewer to go. But I think actually this edge here is almost as important. We've got an edge there, because I squint down, the shadow on the little bottle, the little vase, is not too dissimilar to that, where with the big dark in there and the big dark in there, my eye's being driven to those areas far quicker and far better. So now we'll sort of continue this line down here. We've got all of that working nicely. Even losing that edge there. There's a lovely dark in there. That's where we come back to the lights and the darks. We're then starting to need to analyse where are the darks, where are the lightest lights. And once again, to drive the eye to the focal point, we want to put those edges and those darks in with our primary focal areas. And this one, it's definitely an upper focal point, which is actually a bit more of a rarity in general painting, because normally we think of focal points down in the bottom third, closest to the viewer, closest to where we are. But like portraiture and figurative work, being eyes, nose, mouth, it's normally the more interesting aspect for the viewer to look at. Here I have a very different subject, so I've tried to choose as a wider variety of subjects. It's a big shadow in the foreground, but straight away, as I mentioned, my eye is going straight to that edge there. And then we have a few more edges here, a few more edges up there. And normally they're not always the biggest shaped line. When we think that vertical there, that is really our biggest line, our biggest, and the door is probably the biggest individual shape area of this subject. But actually almost once again, this will actually be a top third focal area, focal point, driving the eye to there. But then there's some other subtle little shapes and edges down here I'd be aiming to lose, even though we know there's a door frame there. But once again, this is where we're putting emphasis, and I think that's the key word, where we're emphasizing and where we're diluting the message. So that left-hand side is actually a little more lost edge than that edge, even though it's in shadow, but still we have to analyze those edges. That's why I've always believed that to get your best paintings, my best work, it's the research, the development, the time sort of spent having a look and thinking and working out what needs to be done with this subject, and especially when it becomes more complex. So here we have a tram in Melbourne. So once again, I'll be looking at trying to anchor the eye on some of these little shapes here. So we'll have a primary focal area, secondary one here, and then I'd aim to push the eye there. But we take into account all that light on that side. There's not really a lot of hard edges. It's colour, it's shapes, there's light on it, but there's not many or a great deal of strong edges. There's a slightly stronger edge there. Let's squint down, we've got lost edges all in here. And that's where our shadows do really play a huge part in our ability to use and adjust and get the most out of the subject is in those shadows. So that's why we want to pay a big attention to where, of course, the light is, but definitely where the shadow is, because that's where we can lose them. And almost this subject is almost like a still life. Instead of the tram, if you replace it with the vase, same situation. That's why we've got to divorce ourself and our mind and our eye from what the actual subject is, and then primarily think in terms of lines, shapes. That's why that process, I love to really call it the DNA to a good day, because if we are in trouble, we can go, oh, how are my lights and darks, warms and colds, shapes? But it's normally edges. And once we get to that fourth one and we're mostly thinking in those terms, that normally means our structural painting or the structure of the painting is working beautifully, so we don't have to worry too much about sort of this, that and the other. We can then truly focus on the final part, and most definitely, I believe, the most important part. So with this one, it was just a little one from Monte Rosso. We were just walking through one of the alleyways. I would have loved a bit of sunlight on this, but you can still see how the eye is driven by the hard edges on there, another sort of secondary. So it actually is not a bad idea to think to yourself, okay, where are the number one, where are the biggest, the strongest? That's normally a good idea for where should I put my emphasis, where should I isolate and put my focal points. Because you can see with this one, all those lemons inside the box, but they're not really the focal point, they're really the driver. There's kind of a bit of a lost edge there, and even on the box there's lost edge, a little bit of a found edge. We have a semi-strong, and remember there's not really a yes and no question or answer. Like painting, there's a great amount of shades in between that darkest dark or the strongest to the weakest. So yeah, we do have a more lost edge there. Even sort of this edge here and that guy there, they're pretty close to lost. There's not very strong when you take into account those guys. So it almost gives us the ability, and that's why I always sort of thought, and I'll say to students, I would like the technical ability to be able to be blindfolded, driven, flown, taken somewhere, blindfold off and do a good or sometimes great painting. And that's where our technique, our approach, our ideas, how we approach something is so important. And that's where I really truly believe this is so powerful. And I actually do love talking about it, thinking about it, because it's kind of the coding in behind a painting. So here I'm finishing off on a reference image, which is from Melbourne as well. But I've always loved painting fountains, so I've got the painting as well. So if we have a look, that this shape here really does bring the eye in, and it's one of the biggest, sharpest edges and biggest shapes, maybe just barring that shape in the background, but perspective and its smaller shape, that's going to push it into the background, but that will be definitely a secondary. And then I'm aiming to put the attention up to here. So we've gone 1, 2, 3, and you'll see that the building in the background is a lot more soft-edged. And so I'm once again using that shadow, not only for directional lines, but how to lose the shapes and the edges as well. So we've got a little lost edge there, a half lost, a little bit lost there, and there we bring that found. So when we think, I've been talking about those big shapes and medium-sized shapes, but also then we have those small ones, and that's a classic little small shape there where I will be using my other favorite approach. And when I'm thinking in terms of doing a painting, so if our job was to draw a circle, so there we have it, that would almost be more realism, a realist. Then the Impressionist approach and idea and mantra is to lose as many edge. So we're actually asking the viewer to join those lines up, formulate the full shape. So if we were painting, or if I was saying, let's do a painting of a circle, I would be aiming to leave out as much of the circle as possible and even have different strengths and weaknesses, so that we are looking for ways and thinking of ways how to get those lost edges, and allowing that we have less will then create more. So it's a huge subject, and it's something that I think, like most things in life, once we've either heard of it but can get the full grasp of it, that's when we can really run with it. But still, like tonal values, brushwork, I'm still working on how much can I lose and of edges, and what do I need, and the areas that I need to definitely make more important. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.